Welcome, reanimated fans. I am H.A. Conrad here with my intrepid co-host, Stuart Tiffin. Hello, Stuart.
Hey, good morning or hello, depending on what time you're listening to this.
Yeah, good morning. This is we're after this episode, we're gonna be traveling for the holidays, so a couple weeks out of the game, but we'll be back eventually. But ahead of that, we're gonna do a couple more episodes of The Walking Dead, The World Beyond, and then chat about a couple of news items that we found. One which I predicted, so I admit I am being a little bit smirky about it.
Yeah,
Um,
honestly, I do take umbrage with the tone of your text message. When I text you and say WTF, and you're like, called it. I'm like, we both have called this in the past. You're taking all the credit for something that we have on this
I you
podcast
can
on the
co
record.
you
On the
can
record, we
co
have
you
both
can
said she's
co-call it. You can
okay.
co-call it. That's fine. I think that's fine. I was more taking this is the problem with text, no tone, right?
No tone.
I was more in my response to that, it was more sort of the way that the article was like, oh, that this is such a huge shock and that they didn't set it
Well,
up in
it
this.
wasn't even it was like a clip from Talking Dead. I mean, also there's an article here, but
Yeah.
when I texted you initially when I first saw this news, and my caption was "What the actual f," uh, which does make it sound like I was more taken aback. If anything, I would classify my reaction to the news that Maddie Clark is coming back to the Fear of the Walking Dead as I can't believe they actually did this. I think
I
that's my
mean,
reaction.
I okay. I don't I can totally believe that they did because
It's yeah, and as I also said in that text chain, it's just desperate. It just smacks of desperation, and I feel like this was my prediction that if they did bring her back, it's just to try and undo some of the damage they did to this show after
well,
season.
I actually was thinking that is like, I think even this sort of Hail Mary, so to speak, isn't necessarily going to, I don't know how they can fix it. However, if indeed this was not planned out, it sounded like Kim Dickinson had been surprised that she had been written off the show when it actually happened.
Yeah, there were and remember
And there were
reading
a
an
lot
article
of,
by
yeah,
with Dave Erickson, an interview with Dave Erickson, the former showrunner, who was like, I think this was a terrible mistake. I feel like we read something
yeah,
along those lines. And Kim Dickens had expressed some feelings like, yeah, I didn't want to leave the show.
yeah,
It was clear that she didn't leave for another project like
right.
Cliff Curtis or the guy who played Nick.
Yep. It's all good. I will watch with popcorn
Of
at
course.
this Hail Mary.
It was also
But
interesting on the clip from Talking Dead where she's like, yeah, so Shambliss and Goldberg called her up and took her temperature, and she says that on Talking Dead, and to me that is like the most polite diplomatic way of saying, would you even consider coming back to
consider
the show?
it. Yeah, yeah, I know. And honestly, if she had other things going on, I think she could easily and happily told them no.
I haven't
But I
seen
do,
her in anything recently, have
she
you?
hasn't been in anything, but there's also COVID, so it's all that stuff too. But I don't know. I think hopefully she drove a hard bargain and made them pay her a lot of money to
Oh
bring her
yeah,
back.
hell
I
yeah.
hope she took full advantage of her leverage in this particular situation. So, um, but anyway, I really like her as an actor. I do think that they wasted her character a lot, so maybe they can make up for some of that in this new season, in her reappearance. I hope it's not just a we're bringing her back and then we're going to kill her off again
Well,
quickly.
in theory, she's going to be a series regular. I think she's going to get that
Okay.
level of
It
casts.
didn't seem that it was totally firmed up yet, or at least they weren't saying it
Well,
yet. So that's what gave me pause. But anyway, we'll see. And I'm on board. So let's see what happens with this one. And then actually Bill, my husband, found this podcast with Alan Alda. this is something that Alan Alda has a podcast and he interviews different people. And so this is from, I think, 3 or 4 days ago. And his guest was Max Brooks, who was talking about how, zombies could save us all. And I haven't yet listened to it. So it's in my queue, but I think that they're talking obviously about current events and things like that. And, Max's focus on zombies. So it I know, like, at first when I sent this to you, Stuart, you thought it was like competition with our podcast, which would be hilarious if this is the road that Alan Alda decided to go on, but it's not, sadly. I mean, that would be really amazing if Alan Alda started his own zombie podcast.
I would be his first subscriber.
I
Absolutely.
would be a big fan. But anyway, but it's just this episode, so check it out, and we will too, and we'll maybe talk about it the next time. But and I think, was that it for news for this week?
Well, I just wanted, this isn't news, but it is. We just haven't talked about it yet, and it probably was news months ago. So there's a video game franchise on PlayStation. One of the reasons why I was like, I'm behind the ball on this one is it's a PlayStation exclusive video game franchise called The Last of Us. It is being made into a prestige television series on that's going to come out on HBO Max. It's going to be starring Pedro Pascal and Bella Ramsey, I believe, is the female lead, and you would recognize from Game of Thrones. She played that little badass Mormont.
Yeah, and Pedro Pascal is obviously.
And Pedro Pascal needs no introduction on this podcast.
No, but also in Game of Thrones, so it was kind of.
Oh, that's true.
I wonder if that's how they made the connection, but
yeah, maybe, but so they're gonna be, and this is a zombie show, or it was a zombie game. I've never played it, so I don't know what their canon is like. I heard from a friend that it's not quite the same as maybe standard zombie canon, but I think we should keep an eye on this. The show's gonna is expected to premiere next year, or in 2022, probably in the late second half of the year. And I think we should be watching this development with great interest.
Yeah, so, I'm excited. Anything he's in, I will watch. So,
yeah.
So
I believe this is being also hailed as like the biggest production ever filmed in Alberta, Canada.
Well, I don't know. Anyway, well, I guess, is this the only product? No, I'm teasing. It's pretty hard to film up there anyway. So I think,
isn't Black Summer all filmed up there? So
yeah, it is. I'm just being silly.
It's becoming like our Bollywood. Yeah, it's like the place for our stuff.
Our zombie wood, right? Yep,
exactly. So yeah, Last of Us. Let's keep an eye on it. I'm looking forward to hearing more about it.
That'll be awesome. And we do, so we're gonna talk about the 2 episodes today. Which quatre voix, sorry.
So I looked up the etymology of this word, and it's just bastardization of French. It's quatre voix, which means 4 ways, and it's basically, what it means is what is it, like a significant intersection in your life, like an inflection point.
Yep. And then who are you, much like CSI, The Who, that kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
And so we're going to talk about these 2, and then once we get back from the holidays, we'll talk about the rest of this season and then jump into something else. But I at the outset, there's some things that I think I like, and some things that still just feel very, like, to me overall, I still think that the pacing of the show is just, like, to me, it feels like each of these episodes lasts so long. Like, I don't normally check to see how much time is left on an episode, and for both of these, I was doing that.
The second one, not as
much with the second one. The first one more so, but
I thought the second one was more exciting because it got into like the cloak and dagger stuff. Pardon me, a little more.
And we also have a big appearance of somebody in the second one.
Actually, she appears in the first one. It's just a post-credit scene.
Yeah, she was in the. But I mean,
way bigger pieces
and she's got a bigger piece of the story in this one. So so in any case, Um, let's kick it off. Let's talk about Quatre Voix or
Or Quatervois.
carnivores.
Carnivores. This there's an absurd beginning to this episode. In fact, I started to watch it and then I had to stop because I was laughing and I had to walk away from the show. And I only got like, I don't know, 2 minutes into it. And the scene I'm talking about is the one where Iris is, well, it's not that close to the beginning, but it's after they've met up with Silas, which is kind of close
Oh,
to the
it
beginning.
is funny though.
And I thought that was okay. Like the Will and Felix staying behind to do some like twirly zombie kills felt a little bit extraneous, but
Yep.
the reunion is heartwarming between Silas and Elton.
Yeah.
I just want the show to be only about Elton, though, is kind of where I'm landing.
Yeah, I think he's honestly one of the best actors, and I like his story better. And I kind of wish he would just strike out on his own and do
There's a,
stuff.
I feel like there's a scene of him walking next to Iris, and he's like a good foot taller than her now. And
Yeah, I
I'm
know.
like, this is the problem with the child actors. This kid went from, I'm pretty sure, shorter than
Oh no,
everybody else.
he definitely went through a growth spurt, so much so that like it's doubtful whether his Teddy Ruxpin little corduroy coat would still be fitting him.
I mean, yeah,
Clearly they've had to refit that outfit to him because
yeah.
he's way too big now. And the whole point was that it was supposed to be for kids. So anyway,
Well, he
but
is still a child, but he's in that phase of life where you can grow a foot between
yeah,
between
between
years.
seasons, right?
So
Yeah.
he's doing that. But you know what? He's still got the same sort of like vulnerability to his acting, that he still comes across as like, vulnerable Elton. And he's, yeah, I agree. He is like, he's everything about this show. He's the best thing on screen. But it's the scene where that I had to stop watching for a little while, was where Iris is trying to persuade Silas that the CR is
Yeah.
bad, and she's
It's
like,
pretty rough. And it's like all honestly, every time they do this with anybody, they have absolutely no evidence
and she
of
says that,
any of this.
she's like, oh,
And
I can't prove it, but I know it. And and she says something like, and I can't be wrong, not this time. And I don't even know what she's talking about, but it's just like the worst way to persuade somebody that you're right.
right.
Let's just be like, look, I know I've been wrong in the past, but this time I'm right. Oh, and you know what? The last time I saw you, Silas, you were on trial for murder, and I was not in your corner.
Well, that's my point. Like, I think it would have taken a little bit more than this, no matter how big of a crush he has on her, for him to come over. And he has found at least a little bit of support um at this in this new life, and he says it, and they're basically asking him to blow all this up with no evidence,
Yeah,
and they
it's this
betrayed.
really shitty situation they put him in, honestly.
Yeah, and
Like,
and it's not just like, it's not just that, first of all, now they're revealing themselves to him and now he's the linchpin of their whole plan. It's that he's now going to be putting himself in danger, and the trust that he's built is just, he has to break it with the person that at this point is the only person that's kind of been in his corner, or
his
feels like
camp
it's been
counselor. Yeah.
kind of, like that's sort of the role that he's been playing. So anyway, I almost wanted, what I was hoping, because like Silas is pretty quiet in this scene, and I honestly thought that there was a chance he would be like, no way, go away, step off, because he kind of felt that way, right? Like there's a moment, and then suddenly he gets all gooey eyed, and he's like, all right, I'll do it for you, Iris. And it's quite, honestly, it's like kind of gross because she clearly is still, you know,
She's
um,
stringing him along.
she's stringing him along, and she also knows what her connection with Percy is. She knows she has no intention of doing anything with Silas here, and
Yeah.
it's kind of gross. So
At
anyway, I
least
don't.
at least she shows him her like nice, it's actually a very nice drawing. She shows it to him
Yes,
after he agrees to help her instead of using it as like a lure also. But
yeah,
yeah, I think this is manipulative and not great. And she, like, they're trying to, they're doing this thing where at the beginning of this show she was the responsible one on the straight and narrow, and Hope was the one who was crazy doing unpredictable stuff, and they've
yeah.
crisscrossed. Great, cool, I get that as a narrative thing, it makes sense. But I don't think that maybe it's the actor playing Iris. I don't and the delivery of the dialogue, the motives that she has, none of that is lining up for me in terms of like her massive distrust of the CR that seemed to kind of come out of nowhere last season. uh
Yeah, and then the other piece of it is that the reason why I think that the manipulation really bothers me, and this is probably deliberate in terms of the storytelling, is that she's accusing Huck and others of manipulating her and them, of their whole group, of being duplicitous, of lying and whatever. But that's kind of what she's doing here. But for the idea that, and I mean, I think that's what they're sloppily trying to do, is that she's saying that this is for the greater good. Well, that's the same rhetoric the CR uses, right? You hear other people say it all the time.
right.
You hear it multiple times from various characters in the CR. And so I think that that's the parallel that they're trying to draw, because really one of the only sort of like, I mean, Silas out of all of these is probably, and Elton too, I guess, but he's one of the most, um in terms of what's happened with the group and everything like that, he's like done nothing wrong ever really, other
Yeah.
than sacrifice himself. So
Well, and
that's,
he wasn't sure if he was a serial killer for a while. That was a bit of an odd twist, but
oh yeah, but it's, that's neither here nor there.
yes, I
But
agree. He's done nothing wrong plot wise. He's kind of just a bystander, like a
yeah,
useful idiot. In this case, he's definitely playing the useful idiot for her scheme,
yeah,
and he's going to pay the price. Like we haven't seen what happens to him, but at the end of this episode, he gets arrested because of
yeah,
what he does
and
for her.
yeah, and like, Dennis, he even tries to go about it without like, without actually stealing or betray, like he's a little shifty about it, but he basically just asks to have like permission. And I mean, it's interesting to me that they trust him so fully at this point, but maybe that's just between him and Dennis. And even, he's in the warehouse and talking to them, none of his crew are around. It's sort of like a little convenient. But I but
These two episodes each have a bunch of scenes with this little posse of schemers,
yeah,
like just hanging out in places that they shouldn't just all be there. Like
right,
it gets way worse in the second episode, but
it
when
does,
they're
yeah.
all in Leo's apartment or they're all in the lab, and it's like they only move in this little huddle, this gaggle of schemers, and I just feel like it looks so suspicious. And like the first
Well,
example of that is here in the
oh
college.
yeah, no, they're in a huge group. They're not being stealthy at all. I will also say that, in these little sort of like meetings that they have or after, it's not even like they're able to sort of walk around as if, especially those that are in the CR compound, they all look shady as heck. Like all of them, like even Leo walking around is all agitated, and it's clear it's not like people don't notice this kind of thing. So I just thought that that was kind of funny. But like they're like the least stealthy group of spies ever, or like operatives, whatever you want to call them. Um, so with this episode, it's definitely sort of the plan to get into the compound. And again, it seems very, I don't know, were you bothered by this whole thing? It did seem a little far-fetched,
The
and
plan to get in.
yeah, like it just seemed like they would have found the, like they've had the CR out looking for them for a long time. And I guess you could make that argument, but even just, I don't know, just getting there with Indira and her group, and then, their whole plan seems very short-sighted. And it was all like, I mean, and that was the weird thing. It's all riding on Silas. Well, it just, and clearly there's a mole somewhere in this, right?
What are they
I'm
even trying to do? Are they trying to just get Hope and Leo to leave with them?
I guess, but even that's a very hard undertaking given the role that Leo has been playing in the research. So it's just not, it doesn't make sense to me that they're going in, and that they also have, Percy's whole deal, like that he's going to pretend to be Elton and that protect Ivers, but also maybe kill Huck. Like totally, like it's all like a big liability, right? Like it just feels very strange. Um, though kind of funnily enough, Percy is now smaller than Elton, kind of. So the jacket actually makes more sense on him.
Yeah.
But like, I don't know, like, I just think even their plan doesn't seem to be exactly, it doesn't seem to be detailed enough to actually get them out of here at the end. Like, they really are going into this trap, so to speak. I don't know
To accomplish just
what.
basically what they're trying to just get Hope and Leo to go with them, and they almost execute their escape plan, but then at the last minute they decide not to. And I think that is actually in the next episode is when they make that decision, because
Right.
in this episode it's Huck has finally turned.
Yeah.
Huck is doing this, like, she's going into the safe in her mom's office on their behalf, and finding paperwork that somehow, I mean, I've looked at this sheet of paper a few times, and it's like a spreadsheet, and I'm like, okay, I'll take your word for it that this proves that the CR took out Omaha. But
Yeah.
this is their smoking gun. This is it, right?
Right.
Is it enough though to accomplish any of Iris's goals, which are to turn who against the CR? Who's
Right.
left? Who can actually, like, is it just Indira's settlement? That's all. I mean, and she doesn't even know how many of them she can count on. In fact, all she really has is Indira, Asha, and Asha's brother, whose name I can't remember. And now I don't have to, because, well, he's
Well,
gone.
yeah, he's gone. Yep. Spoiler. Um,
But
but yeah, no,
the
it
whole
doesn't.
premise here of her like war on the CR is just so thin. It's just like, what do you've got nobody.
Yeah.
The 4 or 5 of you are not going to be able to do this. And the show has not done any work to persuade me that she can be the catalyst to overthrow the CR, even though that's her mission. And maybe the show's going to be like, see, kids, don't have stupid dreams, because stupid things will happen to you, and Iris is
Well,
going to get killed or something.
the other thing I will say is that, in terms of execution with this group of people, again, they just don't, they have no spycraft. They, and
Well,
even
at
just the
least Percy can pick
basics.
locks.
Well, yeah, that's great, but I'm just talking about generally walking around and like keeping secrets. Like, Leo's first instinct is to tell Lila,
Yeah.
which, I don't know, man.
Well,
Like,
yeah.
she's still on the inside, and she's the one who told them about your daughter in the first place. So obviously, there's a level of trust there that she had violated, and maybe you don't share with her your big plan.
I don't think
And
he even gets to. I think he never
no, he
does.
doesn't.
He
He
wants to.
doesn't.
Yeah.
But that's his instinct,
Yeah.
is to bring more people into it. The other thing is that knowing that he's really bad at all of this stuff, at least initially, Hope had let him know that this is before Felix and Iris made it onto the base. She let him know she had seen them, I think, to stop him from searching for them. But even so, he's clearly just not good at this. And we've seen multiple examples of this throughout the episode. For a scientist, he really lets his emotions just kind of run wild. And I'm just not quite sure what they're going with here. I mean, I think part of it's to try to show that the adults don't necessarily have some of the best judgment either, I suppose. I don't know. But even him with like Huck talking about different things, there's a lot of like back and forth with Huck about trust, and now she believes it. So like there's a lot of things like that, like a lot of tension that doesn't fully work. I think that it's like, oh, we'll do things by my rules. Like, everybody says this at least one point. She says it, Felix says it, Leo says it. And this is very much similar to kind of the weird statements that Iris makes, which is like, okay, we're just going to have to do it. We're just going to have to get proof, right? Without really knowing what they're going for. Like, as you said, this weird evidence isn't really,
I just,
oh,
who are they going to show it to, and what's that going to change?
like, they're inside the CR. The CR is all powerful, at least in their little world.
I mean, they're even not
Um,
even inside the CR. The CR, we still don't know where that actually
well, right,
is.
they're in
Right.
this compound. They're in the research center. But the one part that I did like was that I can't remember, I think it might have been the Who Are You episode. But it is, I think it is because that's when, they're sort of thinking about what they're doing. But Huck basically says to them, like, yeah, you guys think you're being so coy. You like with your escape plan, you have no idea. Like, because she has a full idea of the extent of the power and the reach. And
But she also well, with her inside knowledge, is able to, it seems like she's able to circumvent a lot of the stuff that they have. I mean, they basically have modern day security and
yeah,
technology, right? They're
yeah,
like they are fully functional society. There's none of this like you just have to knock out the gate guard and sneak out of the
right.
camp sort of stuff that you would see on a different Walking Dead show. Here they have to, I mean, it probably is like a lot of fun for the writers room to be like, oh, now we have like, in addition to walkie talkies, which every Walking Dead show has,
You have
now we have
to,
security cards and
right, right.
cameras and access logs and stuff. And so I think that is a real different vibe from a lot of the other shows, or the other two. But she's pretty good at getting around this stuff. They have no idea what they're doing. They've never lived. I mean, maybe
No,
Omaha had some of this stuff too, the campus colony. Maybe it does feel a little bit familiar, but it doesn't seem like they have any idea what they're doing.
no, which is kind of like why she's driving that stuff. And it seems to be kind of figuring ways around it because she knows it so well. So, even when Felix and she are kind of doing their thing, she's like, no, I have to go and do this because I know where it is. You stay here and do this. And that makes sense to me. But I guess just with, and I will say the Who Are You does move a lot more quickly because we have all this going on, and we do get confirmation at least that there is something to back up a little bit of what was in the research that they found, which is that basically a like either an agent or a virus or something, um some type of like biological weapon was used in Omaha and maybe the colonies, and then they released walkers to cover it up. Um, Again, it doesn't feel like they drew a lot, like doesn't feel like you would be able to get to these conclusions because Felix is just walking around this lab. I guess the only thing that really connects it is the V symbol,
Yeah.
that's part of the thing and that they assume that this is what it is. But
Their damn branding for their secret project is too obvious.
again, you're right. Like, who are they going to tell about this other than just getting away and running away? Like, what is their end game here? Because there isn't really one.
Yeah. So I mean, they
Um,
haven't gotten here with their own internal logic. Clearly, I think what they're going to do, though, because you also see in the former episode that Huck's reading a newspaper. And I'm like, they
right.
have a CR Tribune or something, I think it's called. And
Yeah,
she's
yeah,
like, and part of the plot there is that the civilians are going to take over leadership from the military. And so
yeah,
I think there we start to see a little bit more of the meta plot coming to the
yeah.
fore,
Probably
where
that's
this is
the
a military power attempt to hold on to power versus the civilian oversight. So what they will end up doing is divulging Project V or whatever it is to the civilian oversight people, who will then I don't know, uncoup the military junta who is leading them. I don't know how that's supposed to work, but that's clearly what the show wants us to think is
I
going to
know
be
that
up there.
that's where it's going, but I don't know that they have built it in a way that it will make sense.
Well, there's several episodes to go, but certainly Iris, who's the one on the, most, on this course of vengeance and, oh, I'm going to burn it all to the ground. I have no idea what I'm doing. She doesn't know any of this. So we're going to have to see how she connects those dots and meets someone who is a high up civilian. And maybe it's Mason's dad or something, maybe
Well, but
that's how they'll do
also,
it.
but also, she's like going around sending coded messages, telling Elton she's going to burn the place to the ground without talking to anybody else about what this plan is.
She's just a
And
liability.
yeah, she's a big liability. So,
And then how does
um,
Brody get a hold of the message?
yeah, like
Like
where
in
did that even?
one scene later, Indira is talking to Lieutenant Brody or whatever this guy's name is, and he's obviously in trouble. He's been in trouble
Yeah,
since he ever
yeah, he's
got
been in
any
trouble. He
dialogue.
he wants Indira's role clearly. So, you know,
Yeah, and he's like, oh, vote of no confidence in Chancellor Valorum. Thanks, Jar Jar.
yeah. um, but that clearly didn't work out for him because you know, they allowed Elton, or they were going to allow Elton and Will to stay.
Yeah,
Um,
that there was a cut there, and then Indira and Asha and her brother come outside. They're like, "Yeah, it's cool. You guys can stay."
yeah, I know, but
They
you don't
tried to
even
do
get to
some
see.
like
You
how
don't
did
even.
the last thing Brody said was, "We're gonna have to do a vote of no confidence in Indira's leadership," and then cut, and then
Yep.
next thing you know, it's like everything's fine. Like what? I don't. Are you lying, or did we just miss some other? Or like, do they have to schedule that vote because their calendars were all too booked up to do the vote right then and there in the room? I don't feel like they would have to wait. I feel like they would just take that move. I mean, if Brody's worried about Will and Elton, he would get them arrested, and they wouldn't be able to just walk around with Asha and her brother.
Right. And then, Will's big plan. Okay, I'm going to go to the compound now. It's like, all right,
Getting
do we understand yet that nobody should be going to the compound? And
and
also I
they
think it's
we
pretty
just went to
clear.
some lengths to make it look like you're dead. Like that
Right.
was a whole episode.
And, I also think that even though the sort of end of this episode, um where we do see Elton, not sorry, Elton, Will going to the compound with Asha's brother. Um, he really wants Asha's brother to go away. So I assumed that he was the mole and that he was gonna do something shady. But then the soldiers show up, similar to how they surrounded Silas. So again, um, it wasn't. I had to kind of been assuming that Will was the one tipping everybody off, but maybe not.
Yeah, I don't know anymore. I'm not
I
sure.
don't. But you know, and poor Asha's brother gone from
Poor
this world so
poor
quickly.
nameless Asha's brother who had
Right.
just his second batch of dialogue for the whole show, and I was saying something thoughtful and meaningful about his dad's gun. He was going to give it
I
to
know.
Will, and then he gets shot in the face, well, in the back of the
Yep.
head, from like 300 feet away
In the
in the
dark.
dark. And these CR guys are just lighting up people they see standing on top of a hillside 300 feet away. And I'm just like, that. I mean, you've got perimeter people out here. They're your friends. What are you doing?
Right. Like that seemed
It's
little
insane.
hasty. A little hasty.
We did also forget to, the twist at the end, the post credit scene of episode 5 is that Lila Bellflower is in her lab and she's got new test subjects. And oh my gosh, it's a soldier. I don't, that's not the guy that, no, that's not the guy that Iris killed. That's just some other rando,
I
right?
think it was a rando. I would have to rewatch it to see because the guy she killed was kind of nondescript, but
He had blue eyes, I think.
yeah, and he was like very, very, but you know,
Just,
Lila and we have Leo kind of thrown off the scent because he hears Lila's very sad story.
but
Um,
in the scene where she's in her lab, she's like, I know this is my last chance to get this right, and please tell Colonel Kublek that I'm on it. And then Soldier raises her visor, and it's um, Jadis Stokes apparently, and she's like, "Oh, Lieutenant Colonel Kublek's been called away to the CR indefinitely, and
hmm,
now I'm in charge." And she moves into her office in the next episode. So I'm also just like, all right, there was a scene between Huck and her mom in this episode, the episode 5, where they're kind of like trying to come to terms and like patch up their relationship and stuff. There's no mention of Colonel Kublek leaving
right.
anything. And then suddenly she's off the show in a way. Like, I don't know if she's coming back even. I wonder if that was, I don't know. Like, it's just suddenly, it's very abrupt. And then it's freaking Anne slash Jadis, with a much shorter haircut. And she's like, now I'm the boss. And I thought that was, well, first of all, I didn't catch that post credit scene until I was watching the recap for the next episode, and it's like, well, wait, Jadis was in the last episode. How did I miss that? And I had to go back and like
Yeah,
find that scene.
I did the same thing. So you weren't the only one.
Okay.
So, um, yeah, that was really weird. One of the things I will say that is very successful is Jadis's appearance. Her interactions with Huck are super creepy and veiled, and
Oh God.
she does that weird Jadis thing where she's like seems like she's joking, but she can also seem threatening, and you just there like you're on your guard with her, and Huck
Yeah.
obviously is. And so I do think that those scenes were pretty successful, and you could totally believe because she really wants a promotion, um she would throw anybody and everybody under the bus for power. um Not just because she believes in the CR, which she says she does. And we all know the deal she struck to get into the CR, so
Yeah,
which was to hand over
a very
a
valuable asset,
a very dirty and crazy bearded Mr. Grimes.
and like impaled and shot and beat up. Yeah, he was not in great shape. I agree though that well, actually, part of me disagrees with this, like her scenes with Huck, where it is just, to me, there's no actual joking here. It's all threat. And even though Huck tries to play it off like it's a joke, like there's no suspension of that in my mind, that she's not actually saying, oh, I might have to arrest you, and you know, if you call me a bitch again, I'll put you on the floor. And she's saying it to a smile, but to me, it's just all threat. And in a way, I kind of wish Pollyanna McIntosh had played it down a little more. It's just too threatening to me. It's like,
It's threatening, but it's her thing, and that's just what she does. And I think it's, she's also even says outright that she's all about theater, and this is quite theatrical. So I think it's, over the top for a reason. Um, but I also really like Huck's sort of reactions to it, which are pretty badass and on her feet, like especially when she like is like, oh, my name's not Huck, like
yeah,
that's like a good move. And finally we should mention we finally figured out what the big bad thing she did was, because they tie it
we
into this whole
we
episode.
we have an inkling of it. At least we don't really
Yeah.
know what Dennis did, what call he made where people got hurt.
Yeah,
What
but at least we know the sort of
Yes, we know why she got in
basics.
trouble, because she covered for him, and he
Right.
was drinking on the job, it sounds like,
Yeah.
too. But she covered for him and deleted the evidence and got caught, or
Yeah.
tried to delete or yeah, didn't quite delete enough evidence, maybe. What did you think about? So there was with these Jadis scenes. First of all, she's like, you know me well enough to call me by my first name, Jadis. I'm like, wait, I thought your name was Anne, and Jadis was your like weird fake name. And then in that exposition scene with the whiskey, she like breaks it all down. And to me, this felt a little too like, okay, yeah, we really think the trash people was a bad story arc, so we're gonna explain it all away now.
Yeah, but it's terrible. I also agree. I thought it was like a mea culpa for that BS, but I didn't. It's still ridiculous. You had to put them all in the meat shredder for a reason. And then the whole language thing, it was like,
Yeah, it's like give them a
yeah,
language, and and make them, they'll bond you, and all
no,
this
they'll just think you're,
BS.
yeah, it was dumb. Let's see what happens. And if there's, I mean, I think you're right. They're going to have to introduce some faction of the civilian something or other for this to work, or to at least wrap up. I
Well,
mean, I think,
there's the cloak and dagger stuff that Felix and Huck are doing, which I thought was pretty interesting. I guess there isn't a whole lot to it beyond what happens on screen, but him getting stuck in the freezer for an extra
oh yeah, and
20
there's the
minutes was
whole,
pretty funny.
and also like his, not restored faith in Huck, but just the fact that they can fall back into their roles a little bit, even though that there's trust that was broken there. But she does come back for him, and he feels, I think, a little better about her. At least it feels that way.
He, like, it's kind of stupid of him to put his faith back in her. He doesn't have to do that. He twists her arm and forces her to help him on this mission. And so I think it actually would have been kind of hilarious if she had just been like, screw you, you're going to go down for this. I think that would have been pretty funny. There's also that really in a long line of terrible dates between Lila and Leo. She
Oh
comes over for
gosh.
dinner, and Iris is just such a teenage stepdaughter in this scene, where she's like, you're not my real mom, and you used to you experiment on animals, and you made a choice, and you're a bad person. And everybody in the room is just like, yeah, you're being a complete dick right now, can you leave? And she's like, oh, I'm gonna go. And she like actually kind of screws up the plan, because Lila then
Yep.
wants to leave and go check on her stuff.
Yep.
And Iris, like, this was her, like, part of this was her idea, was to find the evidence and make them pay. She can't even like hold it together long enough to try and find the evidence without screwing up the plan, and causing a scene, and like marching out. Well, she gets led out by Hope, but it's kind of ridiculous, and that's part of my ongoing issue with her character in this.
Well, yeah, and I mean they're trying to transfer because even and they what I don't like about it is that it's so over the top and obvious what they're doing and having her and Hope kind of switch positions, where Hope is kind of like, oh well, maybe we should stay and figure this stuff out because they really are coming up with stuff that might change the world and change all of this for everybody. And Iris is like, no, we must burn everything down. And Hope says outright, oh, I thought you were supposed to keep me from doing stupid
Yeah.
stuff. Like the fact that they have to say that out loud, I think is annoying and
It,
lazy. But
it's a little, yeah, it's a little basic. I also thought that Lila's backstory of what happened at the beginning of the Zombocalypse, I think, was really actually very captivating for me.
that
And
was
she, it's
probably the best scene that they have done together.
yes, honestly, you're right. Oh my god, you're totally right. Because she's just describing a zombie apocalypse, which I am interested in. I'm not so interested in their like really boring dinner conversation
Yeah.
in previous scenes. But yeah, like that made me want to watch another Fear the Walking Dead type season 1 where it's like at day 1.
Yep.
Like it was and obviously she like did experiments on her zombie daughter and husband, and God only knows how she's not insane at this point based on that story alone.
Yeah.
She's
Yeah.
pretty
It's pretty bad.
but I thought that was interesting, and it also makes it out like she's not evil, and maybe the tattoo on her hand is not actually a CR tattoo. It's a tattoo of her family. I guess that was like her family's symbol, maybe, possibly.
I don't know. It's a little
Yeah.
hard to see where that's going to go, because she is still clearly experimenting on people.
Yeah,
And
because that last guy's alive. Like he's not a
yeah,
zombie, right?
no. And she keeps asking for test subjects, et cetera, et cetera. So I think, like we'll have to see what happens here, but note that she did not confess her more recent crimes to Leo. So I feel like there's more to come on this.
What were her more recent crimes?
Her experimenting on live people. I
Oh, well,
mean,
yeah.
he doesn't know about that yet. So,
Well, you got to
and
break a few eggs.
and it's been ongoing. So I think we have to see where that leads. But that is for another day. Anything else to add
I guess
before
I'm
we
kind of
wrap?
interested to see what happens to Silas. We don't get to see anything of him in this episode, and
Yeah.
I think he'll be fairly central in the next one based on the look
Yeah.
ahead. Um, I kind of just want to get this show over with, part of me, and
Same.
I know that I've like turned a corner. I'm biased against it. I'm trying to find moments of light, and I do think they're out there. It's just like, yeah, it's those scenes with Elton. It's that scene with Lila describing what happened to her family, but they are just, and I guess some of the whiskey drinking scene with Huck and Jadis was good. It also just felt a little too heavy handed.
Mustache
A
twirly a
little,
little
yeah.
bit. Yeah.
Yeah. Uh,
Um, but I mean, I think they also got to set her up as the big bad. So we'll see. I have a prediction that we may see Kublek show up in this chamber of horrors as a subject, maybe.
no
But
way.
there's, I don't know. I'm just trying to make things fun here. But if anybody else has some
Somebody has
predictions,
to show up in the Chamber of Horrors, right?
yeah,
A
yeah,
known character. We haven't
yeah.
seen anybody we know yet, but it
No,
has to
but
be
it
some.
has to be,
It'll be Will or Silas or somebody.
or Asha or something.
Yeah.
So, um, but if you have any thoughts about this, gentle listeners, please send us an email, reanimatedpodcast@gmail.com. You can tweet at us, reanimatedpcast, or leave us a note on our main page, reanimatedpodcast.com.
Yeah, that's all true. And give us a holler. And I think you already mentioned it, HA, but we are going to be radio silent for a little while around the holidays. Yeah.
Yep, but we'll be back. We'll be back. I think shortly before the new year, or around the new year.
Around the new year.
Around the new year.
Okay.
2022.
2020 deuce. All right. So catch you guys on the flip. And thanks for listening.
Ciao.
It's like the longest sign off we've ever done. And goodbye.